Hello and welcome. I'm Alex Proimos, Head of Institutional Content and Investment Magazine, and this is Market Narratives. This show is a series of unorthodox conversations with thought leaders influencing the world of fiduciary investors. For more related insights and analysis, please remember to check out our website, investmentmagazine.com.au, and subscribe for a free email. And with that, please enjoy this week's episode. Today I'm joined by Chris Clark, who's the Chief Executive of Delta Drone International. Chris, welcome.
Thank you, Alex.
Well, drones is a fascinating area. It's a new space that many people, I guess, see in their walks to the beach with people running their drones around the beach and over hills and other sorts of monuments these days. What got you involved in drones or interested in drones?
Yeah, thanks, Alex. It's so fascinating, and you're right. A lot of the context of what we see today is really these kind of consumer grade drones. These little drones that people are worried, or they see in movies and flying over your house, like you say, all over you on the beach, in the woods. And really, as Delta Drone International, we're really more focused on the those enterprise applications of drones. So drones are a lot bigger, not necessarily the size of these big military style drones that shoot rockets out of the side, but ones that already are here for purposes to assist in the mining and agricultural and let's say like engineering and oil and gas industries.
What specifically got you involved in drones? Like what actually was the trigger for you to say, I'm going to now go and be a CEO of a drone company?
Yeah, I guess no one ever pictures himself to be a CEO, but merely sort of an entrepreneur at start. And about, I guess, it really kind of began about 10 years ago. I've always been sort of involved in the mining industry. And I remember walking onto a mine site. It was a BHP mine at the time, and was selling another technology product. And I was walked into the survey office, and I saw this drone, and it was in like 10,000 pieces, like all over the floor. And I said to the chief surveyor at the time, I said, Jacques, what happened here? And he said, no, man. He said, these Canadian guys came, the slickest salesman you've ever met in your life. They sold us this drone for 50,000 US. And they said, it's the easiest drone in the world to fly. So I said, Jacques, but you mean, why is the chair broken on the floor? And he said, listen, it was easy to fly, just not so easy to land. And I think that just became the part of what the start of today is now. Rocket Mine and Vinci came into Delta Drone. So that's where we started.
So most people know about the consumer style drones that I mentioned at the start. Sort of DJI is the very, very common brand. But what's the history of drone technology to get up to this level? Obviously, we've miniaturized some technology that's been around. What's that transition been?
You're right. I guess, and what's always fascinating is that technology always starts in wartime, right? Because that's where the money and the funding goes. And drone technology and automation in general really goes back as far as the 1850s, where where sort of TNT and grenades were sort of placed in balloons to float to sort of attack the enemy. And we even see, the Nazis in World War II were automating some of their rockets, which are going to, fire across the channel, at the Allied forces at the time. So it already kind of began in the military style, really way back when, over 100 years ago. And now it's sort of come to the part where it's really accessible and available to anyone to use, and combined with other applications.
Now, obviously, with your company, you're looking at professional use cases. Can you give us a bit of context about what specifically you're looking to do with drones?
Yeah, so again, it's also about, you can go to the shops and get a drone off the shelf at about $1,000 sort of dollars, right? We're looking at taking drones which sometimes weigh less than a kilogram but cost over $20,000, and people, it's a crazy sum of money to think about this lightweight of the drone. But at the end of the day, what we actually have found is that customers don't actually really want to own and operate drones. It's really about the sensor that's attached inside the drone that gives them the picture and the details that they need. And depending on what sensor or camera that you put inside these professional drones is what then aligns with that particular application. So we would use let's say, for example, a really high resolution RGB or full color sort of camera in a mining application to do volumetrics, to build orthomosaic maps, really to help mines get centimeter level of detail much more than they could in an aircraft or a satellite photo. And again, if you take those same drones and you attach a multispectral or hyperspectral kind of sensors to a drone, all of a sudden for farmers, you not only can you do precision agriculture. So, other words, right now farmers, for example, are when they kind of spray crops, they just sort of spray crops uniformly right across. But using a drone, you can actually pick up certain spots where some parts of the field may be healthier than others. And then using the GPS technology or the GPS georeference data from a drone, plugging into your precision crop sprayer, you can then do adaptive spraying across a field. So really saving farmers money. And that all just begins with a drone and the photo and the picture and giving sort of let's say this high resolution data pack. So
Is the money that you're spending for these drones? You mentioned that it can be up to $20,000 for a drone. Is that cost in association with the ability of it to fly a long distance? Is it other sorts of sensors like a gas sensor, temperature sensors, humidity sensors? What's the cost that people are paying for?
So really to have a sort of a professional drone and drone professionals, let's say drone service as well, it's again because you got to guarantee the reliability of that data. Again, you can go out and anyone can fly a drone and can take photos or can take a video, and the nice thing is generally photos don't lie, but it's the sensors that see beyond just a color photo. How do you take that photo and turn it into quantifiable data? And I think that's the tricky part, or where people maybe don't see the correlation. I mean, a lot of guys, and we've even seen it on mining sites, where they'll go out and they'll buy a Phantom 4 saying, well, this ticks all the boxes in terms of what I need, and it should do the job. But then we find a lot of customers, like, they get frustrated because it's just not reliable. It fails. It falls out of the sky. There's just no maintenance plan, or what I mean. So customers really, they just want something reliable. So from our kind of point of view, we prefer to use a lot more professional grade or survey grade kind of equipment, because our what we sell is data. The customer, again, they don't really care about the drone. They just say, give me accurate data set as quickly and as cost effectively as possible. And we need to be able to reliably do that. And a lot of the drones which we use start bringing in this sort of semi-autonomous abilities and operations into the equipment itself. So which allows us to sort of preset the drone up, pre-configure these flight plans, these waypoints. So literally the pilot, all they have to do is press a button and the drone does the rest.
So there's really two parts to the drone. There's the hardware, the actual physical drone and its flying apparatus, and then you've also got the whole software package that comes alongside it for it to control and then take data, process data, and then feed back to the actual drone itself.
That's right. So you'll have the physical hardware. A drone, I guess, is what everyone sees, but you're right. In the background, we got this what they call the ground control station, or the GCS, which is where all the flight programming gets done. And I guess even beyond that, in a professional setting, you've got all these regulations with CASA. So it's filing flight plans, reserving airspace, especially if you're in controlled airspace. So actually flying a drone is really only 10% of the actual operation itself. The rest of it is taking the imagery, you're right, processing it, building those models, giving the customer what they need so that they can do their job and move on. And then the rest is completing the paperwork, repairing, maintaining the drone. It's crazy. It's definitely, I think movies have made it out to be a lot more sexy than I guess what it really is on the ground.
You mentioned that the applications to mining and to agriculture. Are there other sort of real world problems that you're seeing drones being used? I know Amazon talked about for quite a while using drones to deliver some items and so forth. Is that actually feasible?
It's come so quickly. You're right, Alex. The real world problems and what we're seeing the biggest growth in today is around drone deliveries, and also this sort of urban expansion of drones. So right now drones are very, very big, and regulators and I guess people in general are a lot more accepting of drones, when we're flying in very safe or non-complex areas. and such as mining and agricultural sites. But we are seeing drones now pushing the boundaries of the urban regions, right? Because that's where everybody is, right? We want to deliver products and solve problems in the cities as well. And right now, that can only be done by manned aircraft. So there's a lot of push in from a regulatory sense to enable these flights over people, but also figuring out a way in which we can mitigate, drones falling out of the sky. So some of these big things of solving real world problems that also would make sense to you and me is, we're looking at the advent in Africa of delivering of COVID vaccines, because just there's not enough fridges. You'll see like the Medina and some of these Pfizer vaccines, they've got to be stored at -20 to -70 degrees Celsius. So there's this really logistical complexity, and that, for example, exists in places like Africa. And using drones to do these deliveries makes sense and solves these real world problems. Blood deliveries have been going on for at least about 4 or 5 years. And now all that experience and technology that's been developed in safe, let's say, safer countries or low risk populated areas like Africa, that is now being brought over to Australia, to really start testing them and pushing the boundaries, where, where we're delivering blood to mines on emergency purposes, in addition to, let's say, helping mines as well. With doing mining volumes, and calculating what they're digging out of the ground.
How much do regulations play a role in the development of drone technology? One of the things in Australia is that there's limitations around how far you can fly a drone. You can't fly them out of your line of sight, for example. How much is that potentially being a limiting factor to the applications?
CASA has been a really amazing, and I think Australia has been an incredible initial test bed for drone applications. They're one of the first countries in the world to come out with drone regulations to give people the ability to not only operate safely in their private capacity, but to even give a commercial operational procedure, and what they call sort of a ROM, an operational manual, which they put out there. So really, the first couple of years were really, really great, in sort of the early 2010s. And but what we've seen since then is that the world has got this demand to push those boundaries, beyond the sort of the perceived safe risk of 1 kilometer. And we call those sort of operations beyond visual line of sight, or BVLOS. And that is the new way which drone and drone technologies and the regulations are going. They're still quite restrictive at the moment, and this is something. And I guess there's always going to be that relationship between the commercial and what people and the technological process and regulators, whose job is to act in the best interest of safety. And it's always, I guess, about finding that balance between the pushing forces from both sides.
Is it a case that the regulators are looking for, one pilot to one drone, so that there's, direct interaction with the drone, rather than sort of this autonomous style of drones that are going out and it doesn't seem to be someone directly controlling them? Is that part of the reason?
You're right. Listen, I can't speak, I guess, on behalf of regulators, but generally, with us, we've got operations all around the world, and my experience has been that when meeting a lot of regulators, that a lot of the inspectors and people who are developing these laws are manned aircraft pilots themselves, right? And generally, when you're in manned airspace, you've got something what they call shared fate with an aircraft. So what happens is that, when you're inside this aircraft, if you do something wrong and this aircraft goes down, you're going down with it. So it's this maybe unspoken link between man and machine when you're operating the manned aircraft space. Now, when you're getting into the drone space, you're right. Right now, we've got this sort of legislated operational procedure where it's one man, one drone, one pilot, one drone, right? In terms of operations, but we're seeing, and even Australia's had pushed this through as well, enabling autonomous operations is the next phase of drone development. This sort of drone in a box technology, where other things are triggered, drones come out automatically, and you have a scenario where you can have 20 to 50 of these controlled by one pilot who's sitting in a remote operating center, very, very far away.
You've raised an issue there that comes, I think, to most people's mind. It's around the safety of these drones, because if people are controlling 40 drones, for example, how do you make sure that safety is protected? And also, there's now another issue around privacy. 40 drones potentially following a car down a road. There's some
Mm.
questions about privacy there. How do you then think about those two issues?
I think to tackle the first question in terms of operating multiple drones, we've really seen it's done. We've had these great cool new concept of drone fireworks. I think you might have seen some of them, especially in like sort of China, where you have a lot of drones where they're kind of sort of sensing each other. They know where they are in relation to each other, and they can draw pictures in the night sky. So we've kind of been exposed that, and there you've got a scenario of over 200 drones which are operating, in unison, and they're fully automated. There's not 200 pilots on the ground flying those fireworks, right? And so we know it can technically it can be done, but you're right. It's about how do we get the social acceptance of autonomous drones flying above our heads, because I think whether we like it or not, it's going to happen. We can't stop the progress of technology. We're going to be starting to have drones over our heads. But number one, you're right. It's about how do we do this safely. So it's around testing, redundancies. Generally you see these like the Google Wing and the Amazon ones. They've got multiple motors. So if one fails, you're not going to have drones falling out the sky. It's about having parachute systems, the fleet management. You're building this massive, big logistical machinery right behind this, all this hardware flying above you. And then again, it's about also allowing for the privacy issues. It's sort of educating the public slowly over time to say, look, we don't have cameras that, for example, face down, or the cameras are very low resolution. You're not going to get. It's really just focused on delivering a package rather than anything else. The drones we operate are over mining spaces. There we've got permission to fly over those particular areas. So it's really about, with anything that we've seen, it's really about communication.
It's interesting when you think about it, because historically we know that there's a lot of satellite technology out there that's extremely powerful. Can zoom into within 10 meters of a person, and you can almost identify their face. And that's been going on for years, and nobody says anything because they don't see it. Now, I guess the difference is that these drones are sort of within sight, and now you can actually see what they're taking pictures of, and maybe that's the challenge of trying to get people to be acceptable of it.
I guess you're right. I think we probably don't know the level of extent of accuracies what maybe military satellites can see versus what we know of. But from a, let's say, use case point of view, where people do, and militaries even do, use drone technology, is because satellites are so high and flying so fast that generally they're only over a particular position on the Earth only once a day. So sometimes you might only, let's say, if you are worried about satellite technology, you at least know they're only going to be overhead for about 15, 20 minutes before it's, let's say, out of visual range. And military style drones are flying at the same height as commercial aircraft, with very, very high powered sensors. So at 20, 30,000 feet above your head. So, but what we're seeing in the commercial space is these the implementation of what they call unmanned traffic management platforms, or UTMs, which seeks to sort of harmonize and synchronize all these drone operations. So not only, I don't know if you've kind of got that flight radar app on your phone when you see commercial aircraft, and you see where they're flying with the transponders. That's where drones are going to go. So eventually, there's going to be platforms and apps available where you can see where drones are flying above. You'll know it. You follow procedure. If you all of a sudden your house ends up being underneath what they call a drone corridor, because that's where it's going to be going. We're going to have drone highways in the sky, where drones are going to be sharing the airspace with manned aircraft, and it's just about segregating that airspace safely. So.
You mentioned at the start, about the sort of the history of drone technology coming from military. Most people have seen the military style drones from movies. How different are those military style drones to what the commercial applications of drone programs are today? Minus the weapons. How different are they?
Yeah, I think it's probably a horses for courses kind of approach, Alex. You can get paramilitary drones even in commercial. You you probably got to get some kind of ITAR approval, depending on obviously if the drone's made in the US. But you're able to, and that's what's even happening in Australia at the moment, is some very large drones are being flown to cover for security and surveillance purposes, especially up in Africa, where we have a lot of issues in sort of the public order sort of spacing, and we need to have drones that can fly 90 minutes to 4 hours at a time. And those drones generally tend to be more fuel powered, so a lot more complex kind of engines, whereas the drones that we operate are primarily electric based. So again, just from a safety point of view, to sort of limit any kind of impacts or dangers. So it's really about deciding, do you need something that you're going to be monitoring far away where you don't want to send humans, or is it about what are my needs? Do I need, if I only got a mine that's 5-10 kilometers long, I could probably do with something smaller and less costly and riskier as well.
So let's drill into that in terms of specifically how drones can change the nature of work. You've given a few examples about mining and surveying of mines, for example. What specifically are the types of jobs that you're doing, maybe on a mine site or around public safety or security?
In the mine space, drones have had a really big impact. Beyond the, let's say, the obvious things of removing people from dangerous working areas. When we originally started this way back when with BHP when they had coal mines in South Africa, they were telling us when they were doing their monthly measurement of stockpiles, they would give each of their surveyors this high precision GPS, and they would tell them, all right, you need to go and walk over those stockpiles, and some of them could be 20, 30, 60 meters high, these massive big coal stockpiles. And just if you kind of think about coal in its form, in a hot summer's day, as these guys were walking over these stockpiles to measure them, the coal stock would be melting their boots. The coal would be sort of spontaneously combusting, right? And so for there, it was about taking people out of these dangerous situations, out of the working areas, out of the pit where most accidents occur, and where you just got a drone that's flying overhead. It looks like a bird. People don't even know that's happening. So safety is probably the biggest reason why we implement drones on mining sites. The other one generally is also to do with cost and speed. What we found is again, instead of sending out 5 guys, you got one pilot now who can fly a drone and do in 40 minutes what it used to take 5 days to do. And that also really had implications of its own, getting this data really quickly. And I'll tell you sort of an interesting sort of story about what happened with some of our first customers and the impact of drones and let's say the speed of data. When we kind of started out, and you again imagine these surveyors, once a month going out getting all the volumes for a mine, that at the end of the month they would get sort of their volumes and go, well, that was a horrible month. Let's do better let's do better next month, right? From a management perspective. And so the mine's only getting about 12 data points, per year. And then what you find is by flying a drone, and because it can do this really quickly, we were collecting and providing volumes almost on a weekly kind of basis, if not even a daily for some customers, which means that all of a sudden you go from only getting these 12 data points per year to 200. Now, people say, in the beginning, they're like, why do I need 200 data points? Why do I need to know how much I'm digging out of my mine every single day? And what we found is that by the mines who really kind of took that to heart and say, well, we kind of look at drone data of the same way that we look at the transition of 2G to 3G to 4G technology, is that we're going to build these applications around that with the speed to ingest this data. And now we've got scenarios on some of our customers' mines whereby we are measuring the volume produced per day, and they are even incentivizing and rewarding their shifts workers bonuses. So like literally, so as the guys are leaving the mine, there's like a little electronic sign that says, this was your production for today, well done, your bonus is this. So all of a sudden now, customers who could only only got their volumes end of the month are now getting it every day, and it's really changed the way in which they work and operate. So it's really been about focus on the data and the applications of that data.
The other thing that comes to mind when you talk about sort of the ability to track things is that in some cases with mining, there's some very prized possessions that are coming out of those mines, such as diamonds. These are things that are always high risk value items that could easily be stolen or ambushed, and we've seen a few unfortunate cases in Congo in recent times. This is maybe another application of drone technology.
Yeah, I guess drones can be used for good or bad. And funny enough, we actually have done work on gold mines. I mean, on diamond mines before in Namibia. And if you've ever been to a mine, especially specifically diamond mines, if you what you go in there you can't leave with, so because they every time you leave it's full body searches, x-ray scans. They use the same scanners that they use at the airport, when you stick up your hands and they sort of go around, so they're checking you haven't hidden diamonds anywhere. But you're right, now drones pose an opportunity to obviously fly over the fences, and there is technology available to detect drones, that sort of these drone shields as per se, that you've seen around, as well as for us as professional operators when we're there. The drones, when we fly in, they obviously make a note of what drone went in. They seal it, they mark it, they literally almost sort of weld along it, with these sort of seals that prevent you being able to open up these drones and send them out. So they definitely got the procedures. It definitely can be done, but we generally find that customers in sort of professional settings are they've got the systems in place to prevent those.
If we stick on the public safety piece now, I guess in the Australian context, bushfires are a huge problem. We've got a massive land, and bushfires can pop up anywhere. Drones is, I guess, is another application as an advanced warning system. Likewise, when there's border patrol and customs for Australia is always looking for illegal fishing boats or illegal people transporting drugs into the country, or illegal people trying to come into the country. Here's a couple of other options that can now be used with drone technology.
That's right. So, and Australia's actually also been a really big user of that. Just last year, they bought over 200 DJI units specifically for the bushfires. So they've actually been training up this last year emergency response and firefighters as well, to be able to do fire spotting. So again, by attaching a thermal sensor onto this drone, and you sending it, again 100 meters up in the air, you're able to detect and understand the scale and where a bushfire may be spreading, and where to send people. Also, again, using thermal, you'll be able to detect people as well. So if we need to provide assistance, or these people, sort of hidden and struggling somewhere, and we need to go and save them, that's where thermal technology has really played a very, very big part. So you're right. It's not only just got this commercial application, but definitely from a public safety point of view, we're finding a lot of acceptance. Yeah.
As we look to the future of drone technology, given that it's still pretty much still early days, a lot can happen from a technological advancement point of view. We're curious to get your thoughts around what are the key areas that you're looking for in terms of development of technology. And one other area to think about, it's a really, I guess, big issue today with sovereignty of countries, is that some of these drones are now being built in China, and there's concerns about the international concerns that you have another country potentially spying. So connected issues, but curious to get your thoughts both on those.
Drones are only going to become more autonomous, as we were chatting about earlier. It's the days of one pilot, one drone are really on the way out. We're going to have these drones who are going to be pre-programmed to sort of perform a specific mission, right? And you're right, that brings in a whole new set of complexities and systems and trust issues, because then depending where these drones could be made, while you're sleeping, does your drone sort of take off at night to go do its own little thing, right? And go and sort of spy. So it's really about how do we, what are the systems that we put in place? And definitely the countries like the US are very concerned about this, and they've got their own growing drone hardware markets. Exactly this, to understand that we've got our own sovereignty and security. And I think it will very much happen in Australia as well, where you're gonna see sort of this resurgence of drone hardware coming up, especially for those looking to apply for government and military contracts as well. So it's really about finding the balance of both. I mean, we are an open world. We are a global economy. We've got to figure out where we interact and where the rules and what kind of safety protocols we put in place to prevent it. It is going to be a concern. I mean, drones are going to be hackable. And that's why this brings this whole new market of industry that we're going to see in developing. So it's a really a fledgling industry. It seems simple already on the surface, but like you write, so much more complexity and things to think about below the surface. But it only just really adds and builds to, like we say, that eventual public trust, because the same way we all trust internet shopping now, but 20 years ago, no one wanted to put their credit card online. We're going to see that same acceptance slowly over time, with the necessary security protocols in place happening with drones.
All right, it's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you very much for your time today, Chris.
Thank you, Alex. It's been great.
Thank you for joining us. All views expressed on this podcast are subject to change and do not necessarily reflect the views of Connexus Financial. This podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be relied upon as investment advice.